Hey guys, Michael here. So, for those of you who play POE2, this has turned into really one of my favorite relaxation games. This is basically a game that I don't play to make videos out of very much, but just when I'm kind of in a mood to play something somewhat mindless but still engaging. This has kind of become my go-to for the time being. I really think the most recent patch has really done a lot of good for this game. I think it's just basically in a much better place than it was in prior to this most recent patch. Anyway, so the reason why I made this video is just to kind of talk about a philosophy that I have when it comes to this game. I don't personally like using build guides. I kind of really enjoy the build craft of games like this, and that means kind of figuring things out for myself. I every once in a while will go out and look to see what other people are doing in terms of just kind of getting some inspiration, but I very rarely pay very much attention to the step-by-step. And don't get me wrong, there are some really excellent YouTubers out there with some really excellent guides, and for people who that does appeal to, absolutely knock yourself out. I can understand what the appeal is of having somebody else kind of do all the number crunching and all the hard work for you. So in no way do I mean to disparage any of that effort or anybody who prefers to play that way, but that's not really the way I like to play games. I like the build craft. I like experimenting. I like getting better organically, figuring things out, paying attention to the story, just kind of learning boss mechanics on my own without watching a how-to guide, anything like that. So the reason I mention that is because the impression that I have when it comes to playing a Sorceress character is everybody seems to say play Sparks. And I've played a Sorceress with Sparks before, and it's a fun build, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like every single time you want to play a Sorceress and you want to get an idea for how to level one up, and you look at what a guide or what another content creator or somebody is doing, it seems like it's always Sparks combined with Flame Wall. And I understand why. I mean, it's an effective combination, but I like to do things a little bit differently. And so I just kind of wanted to go all out on fire. And that means not using Sparks. I'm still using Flame Wall, as you can see, but I'm using Fireball instead of Sparks. And I'm not about to say this is, the new meta. This is the optimal build that everybody should be using. Absolutely not. What I wanted to find out is this a viable way to play? And basically kind of proving the point or testing the point of, can you just pick up a character and create one and come up with an idea and grab a skill or a couple of skills and just kind of roll with them and do the best you can? Or do you have to feel compelled to look up whatever the meta is? And so, as you can see, I've been just basically playing through the campaign here. This is all of Act 1. I want to point out, by the way, I am absolutely not the world's best PoE2 player. I would probably characterize myself at this point as maybe an average player. I've learned, I've fought through the bosses a couple of times each for the most part, and have kind of learned the basic mechanics, but by no means does any of this come instinctively to me. I hear a noise and I do a dodge roll. That's kind of the level of sophistication that I'm at. So I'm not a great PoE player, and I don't want to suggest that this is an optimized build, but it's a ton of fun, and I think it does go to show that you can just kind of pick up the game, come up with an idea, start creating a character, do the best you can in terms of min-maxing whatever that idea is that you have. So don't get me wrong, I'm still trying to, this is an energy shield build, obviously. I'm, focused on spell damage and extra fire damage for the most part. So, nothing too extraordinarily extreme here, but just not using Sparks, basically. And yeah, so I'm just kind of rolling through Act 1, into the manor here. I'm just rolling the footage here in the background. As you can see, it's a pretty simple play style. It's basically a 3-button, 3-skill gem play style. I am using Fireball, I'm using Flame Wall, and I'm using Living Bomb. And that's really all there is to it. It's 3 buttons. I roll in, I drop a Flame Wall, I throw Living Bomb on what looks like a relatively easy thing to kill, and then I just start blasting away with the fireballs, try to pick up the fire infusions when they happen. It's not the greatest in terms of single target damage, I will happily admit that, but these bosses are, I feel like they have certainly been nerfed a little bit since the previous patch of the game. They're not, and because part of it is probably I'm a little bit better as a player as well, although still not great. But you know, you learn how to avoid most of the really bad attacks, and you know, you can steadily do damage to them. It's not the worst single target build I've ever played, that's for sure, but it's very far away from being the best. But it's really fun. So if anybody is interested in, you know, basically fire as opposed to lightning or cold, I just wanted to kind of verify that, you know, filling your screen up with explosions in a way other than doing a mercenary with, you know, the grenade build, basically. There's a different way to go about it, and that is, of course, using fireballs. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, maybe other people are going to be like, oh yeah, this is a common build, maybe, you know, lots of people are doing it. Could be the case. I'm certainly not out there all the time looking at all the builds, but it's not something that I've seen very much of. So anyway, yeah, I just thought I would share this experience and kind of encourage people who are, I think a lot of people default into the, I'm going to follow a build guide, I'm going to listen to the experts, because that's what everybody else does. And maybe just kind of mention this, that, hey, there's a different way to play these games. You can play these games where you're not always trying to look for the optimal, for the meta. You're not always trying to race through everything as fast as possible, but rather kind of letting the game, letting your enjoyment of the game come at its own pace. Learn how to be a better player organically rather than looking to see what everybody else does. You know, make mistakes, but hopefully learn from them. As you can see, I'm making plenty of mistakes here, but thankfully I survive every mistake that I make. Yeah, and it's just, you know, again, I feel like maybe this video is more about enjoy the game your own way as opposed to feeling compelled to min-max. And if min-maxing is your favorite way to play, hey, have at it. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if your favorite way to play is as more of a casual and just kind of you like the idea of a fireball throwing sorceress as opposed to a sparks throwing sorceress, it's viable. That's really kind of the main point that I'm making here. So anyway, welcome any feedback that anybody has. Again, not a build guide here, but just showing rather that there is a place in this game for experimentation and for, you know, just basically doing what's fun instead of what's optimal, what's the meta. Again, Act 1, you know, obviously I'm not doing T16 maps with this character right now, and I suspect that there would come a point where I will have to either get better at the buildcraft or start to get better ideas from better content creators in terms of improving the build, because I suspect that there is going to be a limit to just how far I'm able to take a spontaneous build like this. But in terms of getting through the campaign, I'd be willing to bet you I'll be able to make it the whole way through the campaign with this build without too much trouble. And just to kind of emphasize the point, I'm going to go ahead and show here at the very end that after the completion of Act 1, I don't know if everybody already knows this or not, but if you go into your chat window here and you type in /deaths, you can see how many times you've died. And yeah, so I was able to make it through Act 1 without dying. Again, not a meta build, not an optimal build, but a very fun one and certainly quite viable to play the game, even for a casual player like me who's not at all an expert. All right, anyway, I'll go ahead and leave it at that, but thanks everybody so much for watching and listening. Appreciate any feedback that you guys give, as long as it's somewhat respectful. And I will go ahead and leave it at that. Talk to you all later. See you in the next video.
Winter's chill.